All right, the familiar drive down Interstate 580 to Moana Lane to Peppermill, coming off a vlog in which we drove down Interstate 80 to San Francisco for an absolutely epic Green Day concert. By the way, that trip was one of 4 that Anna and I are going on this year. It's really a ridiculous fall in that regard. Going to her original home country, the Philippines. My first time ever over there, October 6th, for a week then. And it is my goal to shoot a vlog in Manila on that trip. That's going to be an epic vlog if I can pull that off. Part of me thinks it's going to be hard to pull off, but I've noticed others have done it. So Philippines for a week, then Thanksgiving Day we're going to go up to Portland. I do not think I'm going to play any poker on that trip. I would have to be blown away by an offer from one of the rooms there, which I don't expect. So it's probably just going to be a trip of hanging out there, seeing Kings, Blazers, some other stuff. And then December 3rd, going back to Vegas. Second year in a row I'm seeing Edmonton play the Golden Knights, courtesy of Scott Bean, who was good enough to hook me up with those tickets. And I am going to do a vlog on that trip as well. So a lot on the horizon, but today it is the Peppermill for a 0-5-10 game right now. I would show up at Peppermill at 11 a.m. on this Thursday, a place where some people put themselves on the list as an OMC. I'd get the last seat on table 1, and would talk Bomb Pot Blue into giving me the 7th seat. The first hand would come when I'd raise 8-9 of spades over a limp, getting 1 color, and my $60 C-bet would take down the pot on an ace-8 deuce board. Every dealer change, we get a double board hold'em bomb pot, and I've kind of come around to accepting them while still maintaining how I could do without them. One thing I do like about bomb pots has been how strong of a hand ace-king is capable of being. Here, 2 guys are dealt out, so with 175 in, I do drill an ace on one of the 2 boards. Gets checked to me, and from the effective low jack, I bet out for 75. 1 player folds. And while this would take a minute to happen, me and 3 other players would all end up all in. I was certainly concerned that I could be getting scooped here, but the vast majority of the hands that have me beat on the ace-high board are behind me on the other board. It just had the feeling of a hand like, if I could just fade a disaster of a run out, that I would be able to profit quite a bit on just 1 board in this multi-way all-in pot. And sure enough, that would prove to be exactly what would happen, as I had everyone else beat on the ace-high board, and a player with pocket jacks would take home the other half of the pot, with roughly $3,000 total in this bomb pot getting split up. So Lance, the dealer, was at the helm for that bomb pot, and during his down, I didn't get a single playable hand. But in the very next bomb pot, I would get one. This time, it was 8-handed. So, with 200 in, obviously there's no pre-flop action. We're going directly to the flop. I'm under the gun +2, and I have pocket 6s, and I would drill a set on one of the boards. Now, the problem is that board is of the monotone nature, so that's a concern. But I'm still going to bet. I make it 75. Johnny Utah, back in this game again on this day, would call MP2, and the cutoff would call as well. So with 425 in, I fill up, negating all flush concerns, with the other board now having 3 diamonds in it. Looking to see how much money I can get out of one of these 2 guys to ultimately have to chop with the other. I bet 250. First player calls, and the second ships all in. Obviously, I'm not folding to that, so my money goes into the pot as well. Johnny Utah shows his cards to his neighbor, but ultimately does exit stage left. So we have $3,300 in this bomb pot, and he would show ace king of diamonds for the nut flush on one board, and we would chop it up. Speaking of Johnny Utah, he's in the rock under the gun, so he gets last action pre-flop. We get a raise to 35 in the cutoff, and I am on the button with queens. I raise to 135 here. And Utah asks, "Are you vlogging?"
You vlogging?
Trying. Because of the fact I said yes, he calls. That sort of thing, by the way, happens more than you might think. So after he puts in those chips, there was no doubt the original raiser in the cutoff is also going to be coming in. And with 405 in there, the flop comes out King 9 Deuce Rainbow, and no one bets. Turn appeared to be one of the best cards in the deck for me. It's another king. And once again, it gets checked to me. I go for value with queens here, as I think all of you would too. I make it 100. Johnny Utah check raises to 300. Now, my initial thought on that bet was how I was not going to be folding to it. But the cutoff, instead of going out like I thought he would, elects to 3-bet check raise jam all in for about 600. I liked my chances against the initial bet, but now I am clearly screwed. So I fold the hand, and amazingly, despite the fact this was basically a min raise, Johnny Utah snap folds also. So it appears that he was indeed in that hand, jumping out of a plane without a parachute. A new player to the game would have the rock, and the player next to me would limp. Needless to say, when I look down at kings in the hijack, I'm going to raise it here, I make it 40. Both the rock, under the gun 1, and the low jack would come along. So, with 125 in, the board would come out ace, 9-4, 2 clubs. It gets checked to me, and I would just check this back. Turn is the 4 diamonds. +1 checks. Low jack now bets out for 50. And thinking I'm going to have the best hand here with kings, a decent percentage, I elect to make the call. Spoiler alert, I did at this point. Other player check fold, so with 225 in, we are now heads up to the river, which comes the deuce of diamonds, and now the low jack checks. I actually considered going for some thin value in this spot, but ultimately I decided just to announce the fact that I had kings, kind of expecting something here, and sure enough, I would get shown what I feared he might have. 10-6 of diamonds for a runner flush, hoping that I would bet big on the river. Unfortunately for him, I was able to sniff it out and minimize the damage. This vlog is being shot on the last day of the final game at the Oakland Coliseum, a place where the greatest player ever, Willie Mays, did play, by the way, just not with the Giants. It's really too bad that Oakland lost all 3 of its teams, with 2 of them going to Vegas, where there's going to be more fans of visiting teams more often than not. I did play a hand with ace-queen where I didn't flop or turn anything. It would check all the way down to the river when I would proceed to hit an ace. And I would value own myself against a guy who just called that bet with ace-king, which is sure as hell not what I would have done in his spot. Also, speaking of former Oakland sports, I call. I pick up pocket jacks in the cutoff and open to 40 over the rock. A really tough player on my left, on the button, 3-bets me to $125. And regardless of opponent's skill level, I'm obviously not folding jacks to that bet, so I make the call. And with 265 in the pot, the flop comes out jack 10, 6, 2 hearts, giving me top set. And my goal was to play this hand in the last way he'd ever expect me to. I donk lead for a small amount, making it 65. Obviously hoping to induce a raise, but instead, he just calls. So with 395 in, the turn is the 7 of hearts, which obviously is not ideal, but how often hearts are going to be a concern in a 3-bet pot, I wasn't sure. Probably not very often. I'm certainly still going to bet. I make it 125, figuring that if he were to raise here, he'd probably go to about 500, and if so, I would think I'd be calling that. But no raise comes, just the call. So with 645 in, the river pairs the 6, filling me up, leaving me no doubt. It certainly seemed plausible that he had aces, kings, queens, or ace-jack here. And I have to believe that he did indeed have one of those hands, because I would bet out here for $315, which was about the most I figured I'd get out of him. Again, very tough player to get action from. He would go deep into the tank here for several minutes. And finally, would elect to make a direct deposit right on top of my bet. So the pot is $1,275. I'd show my hand, and he'd muck. I was then in the rock, and I know this is going to shock all of you, but I looked down at a deuce. The day of good fortune in bomb pots was not done for me, as I would flop a pair of kings on both boards here. One of them was ace high. I would get action on my $85 flop raise from two opponents, but both would give way to me when I made a fairly small bet on the turn. Thursday Night Football would start. Am I the only one that finds it really annoying when Dak Prescott yells out, "Here we go!" before every other snap? I'm just asking. Our last hand would come when we get a limp fest, which I'd proceed, given the fact I was on the button, to take part in with Jack 10 offsuit. The player, though, in middle position in the rock, would make a small raise over the limps. The two guys that were in there along with me would proceed to make that call, so closing the action, I felt it was worth a shot to do the same thing. So with 150 in, we go four ways to queen, 6-9, two hearts, giving me an open-ender. And to my amazement, no one bets. Generally speaking, I never expect to be able to get a bluff through in this spot, but I thought, given the amount of equity I'm probably going to have, that I could try one here. I toss in a black chip. The big blind is the grinder on my left, who did pay me off in that hand when I made jacks full earlier, and again, very tough opponent. He proceeds to check raise me to 305, as you can see. This is not a call I have to make, but I have position, and if I'm able to connect here, it's going to be very tough for him to put me on Jack 10. So I gotta believe I'll be in line for a payday should that happen. And if I brick the turn, I assume he's going to bet again, and I'll just get away from it. So I make this call. And with 760 in, the turn is the 6 of diamonds. That bet that I just mentioned that I assumed he would make doesn't come, as he would check here, which I was surprised by. It would be really nice if I actually had a value hand here, because 99 out of 100 times when someone check raises you on the flop and gets called and nothing changes on the turn, they are not folding to a turn bet. Unfortunately, I don't happen to be in possession of a value hand at this point, so knowing I'm getting called, I elect to just check this back. The river rolls off an offsuit 4. So, what to do here? I was never considering a hero play, thinking that he might just value bet a hand like ace-queen here and I would just be done with it, but he checks again! So at this point, with 760 in there, it's pretty clear to me what he is going to have here. But just because I was able to get value out of him in the other hand doesn't mean I'm going to be able to get him to lay down one of the hands that he could have here. But it is so incredibly obvious that a hand like King-Queen is the best hand here. And he knows from watching this vlog that I would definitely bet that hand in this spot, that this is a must-bluff situation. But before you try to bluff someone, you really should try to construct a range of hands that you're trying to get them to lay down, which in this case I would do, because it's pretty clear he's not going to check raise a hand like a queen and then just shut it down on the turn. That's never going to happen. He has to have a draw here. Problem is, if he has a pair of 9s to go along with the flush draw, which makes a lot of sense, he could easily call whatever I bet on the river. It's even possible with him that if he just has the missed nut flush draw, that he would assume that I'm polarized, which obviously I am, and call me with that. So that's the downside to it. But he knows that I haven't shown any bluffs on this day, and that I'm definitely value betting a queen here, even after checking the turn. He definitely knows that. So I figured I'd take a shot, giving myself a pretty good price on my bluff. I bet $235, and he proceeds to think about it. Then think about it a little more. Then grab his cards and really sound like he was going to fold, talking about how tilting of a spot this had become. And finally, after almost exactly 2 minutes in the tank, would decide to call. And he would win the $1,230 pot, showing 8-9 of hearts, If I had known that he had that specific hand, I would have either checked or bet a lot more. But I would have been fairly pessimistic about the notion that he would fold to that bet I made with it. But I figured that was only a portion of his range. I figured the missed nut flush draws and king high flush draws were a little more likely given the flop check raise. So I figured I had to take a shot to get him off of those hands. And I do think that if he had those hands, it would have worked. Ultimately, that is a very long and roundabout way of saying I should have just listened to Morpheus in that hand pre-flop. So, not that happy at myself for trying this bluff in the first place. I would elect to call it a day, racking up and booking the win, thinking to myself how people often call me a nit as their way to sort of take a shot at me. And in the case of that last hand, I really wish they were right. All right, wrapping up the session, booking a win of $916. Could have and perhaps should have been more than that. Not that happy with myself for that final hand, obviously. But at the same time, those cards were halfway in the muck. And it really is going to get through, I think, a decent percentage there. So I think I had the right read for the most part, just didn't happen to work out, and didn't want to risk continuing to play while on tilt and turning my good day into a bad one. Because I'm very confident the casino will be open again tomorrow. All right, recording this section of the vlog on Sunday morning. I have been told that the legendary Ms. T, since making her return to the ring, as I pointed out in previous vlog, is in absolute beast mode. Take a look at this stack of hers. What a beast she is. I'm told she won a $15,000 pot. Kind of curious how that happened. Gonna have to get that story at some point. But I mentioned John Wick in a recent vlog as well. I think Ms. T is going to be quoted of saying, "People keep asking me if I'm back. Yeah, I'm pretty sure I'm back." All right, so one more vlog to shoot here in Reno, then heading overseas to the Philippines. Somehow my second time overseas in the same year. Unbelievable. Hit those like and subscribe buttons and follow along on Instagram at bendeach. You'll want to do that for that trip, undoubtedly. And we'll see you back here next time.